PWD Allies, the best disability podcast in Canada. Starring your hosts, Brent Frayne. And as always, his producer and editor, Neil Matheson.
My first guest today of the day is Hollis Peirce. He's going to be joining me, and he's got congenital muscular dystrophy. Next is my guest, Hollis Peirce. And Hollis is joining me from Ottawa, Ontario. Hollis, definitely, a lot of people in the disability community there's so many different types of disabilities. There are hidden disabilities, physical disabilities, you name it, all sorts. And having you joining me today and talking about your disabilities and how you're navigating through life's journeys. What is your story?
Well, actually, can we stop?
Sure.
Sorry, but can we stop right there? Because I wanted to ask you, Brent. I don't think we've yet had anybody with muscular dystrophy on the podcast yet. Even going back to your days on Twitter Spaces,
right?
When you
yes.
first, I don't think I think Hollis is the first person with muscular dystrophy that we've had on your show. So
yeah,
I'm breaking the mold.
You're breaking the mold. Yeah,
you're breaking the mold. And Hollis, I have a congenital condition myself. So when Neil had arranged for you to come on, I was very intrigued with your condition. As our listeners and viewers know, I mean, I have an eye condition from birth. It's a hereditary condition, and it's a congenital condition. It doesn't go away, and disabilities never go away. Of course, governments always want them to go away, but hearing what you're going through, I'd love to dive right into that. And so let's find out more. So what's happening in your life?
I am currently living in a long-term complex care unit of a hospital here in Ottawa. I moved here in 2022. It'll be officially 4 years in March, which is outrageous how fast it's gone by. But
happy anniversary.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they going to give you a cake?
Yeah, unfortunately not. Yeah. They celebrate the anniversaries of nurses here, but not the patients.
Big giant candles on the cake.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
You should start a committee, a cake committee.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but before I was living here, during the pandemic, I was living at home with my mom and my sister. And before the pandemic hit, I was living on my own on campus at Carleton University, pursuing my graduate degree in history, which I graduated from in 2019, and it was remarkable how the two came and went. There's like a bookend. There's like I graduated in October, and I was kicked out of residence in December. Because they were no longer housing students because of the pandemic. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hollis, you do a podcast. I understand that's a 21st Century Disability podcast.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I started back in 2023 as I really was kind of feeling lost in terms of where I was going to go from here. I was living at home. I was in the hospital. I was living in the hospital now, and I felt like I was really lost because I really had the pandemic not hit and had my health maintained itself, I would have probably pursued a career in teaching or as a professor in a university or something of the like. And because during my master's degree, I had a number of opportunities to guest lecture in social work classes and disability studies classes and even history classes. So I was feeling a desire for that, and so I started the podcast as a means of just lecturing to the to whoever will listen. And it really, I mean, it was fun for a while as a monologue entity, but it really kind of died down. I got bored of it in that way, and my family said to me, Hollis, like, we don't want to hear Professor Hollis. We want to hear, like,
Yeah,
conversational Hollis, the
Yeah,
Hollis
yeah,
we know, the
yeah,
Hollis we love.
yeah,
And so I started having guests on, and
yeah.
and
That's great.
it's been going ever since.
Well,
yeah, that's kind
sorry,
of how
Brent.
I started too.
Yeah.
Just having people with lived experience and having guests joining and talking about what their journeys through life, what they go through, and what do they want to see change. How do certain accessibility issues affect their lives, and then how to make things better, rather than focusing on the problems, rather than finding
Yeah.
the solution to the problem, how to make things better.
Well, you know what, Brent?
Yeah.
Like again, like I've said a number of times, is like when you approached me to do the podcast, like you said, I want you to produce the podcast, Neil, and like we didn't know each other from a hole in the wall, right?
Yeah.
But you just phoned me out of the blue and said, I want you
Yeah.
to produce the podcast. And what was my one condition, Brent? I said, if I'm going to do this, we have to have fun.
Yes.
It's not going to just be a bunch of like belly aching and like, you
Yeah.
know, this sucks, you know. And
Yeah.
we do some of that. We do some of that, but
Yeah.
but most of it is like we're doing it to have fun, right? And
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to ask Hollis, and maybe you've already answered this, but I just wanted to restate it slightly differently, just in case your answer might change a little bit. Is we often talk about origin story here on the podcast, like for example, my favorite superhero of all time is Spider-Man, and Spider-Man has an origin story, and we can talk about disability. The disability story is kind of the same way of the origin story of that person, of that lived experience. I was wondering if you have like an origin story in your life where you kind of felt that you kind of took off from.
Yeah, I absolutely do. When I was diagnosed with congenital muscular dystrophy at 6 months old, and that was in 1988, and seems like a while ago. Wow, I'm old.
The good old time machine, Ellis.
Yeah, exactly. And the doctor who diagnosed me told my parents that I would have an inability to thrive. And they really didn't know much about neuromuscular disorders back then, and they really didn't know what my life would be like. And so they sort of said to my parents, I probably won't survive much past childhood, and I would have the inability to thrive. And so my parents took that and like used it as a propulsion for me. And this, like I always remember my dad, and he would point his finger, he'd tap me in the head, and he's like, "There's nothing wrong up here."
Yeah.
And really, and my mom just does absolutely anything she can to help me succeed. And she basically runs her life around, okay, what can I do today to help you succeed? And She will drive me anywhere and at any weather. And, it's minus 30 degrees out here in Ottawa yesterday, and she still drove me to hockey. So,
Wow.
So you
Wow,
got
that's
a typical hockey mom then.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And my whole family, my sister, as well, and my brother, and it's just they have been such a supportive network for me, and they wanted to help me in any way they could to achieve what I want to achieve, and I really found a calling in education. And once I got to Carleton and found the right space and program, I began to thrive. And I graduated from my undergrad and then moved on to my master's. And yeah, it was great.
That's good.
That's really wonderful hearing your origin of what life has the journey of where things were and where you are now. I find it so fascinating, just hearing stories of what people have gone through and like and what they're still going through, and how you have the support system in place of helping you, getting through different things in life, and having a sports mom there, and definitely helping you. Definitely the cold weather. We haven't even had one snowflake
Oh,
out
I know,
here.
it's crazy, yeah.
Not even one snowflake,
Yeah.
Ellis. Wow.
All year,
All year.
All
Not
year,
even
not one snowflake, yeah.
man.
This is very unusual.
Just
very
crazy.
unusual.
You know,
Yeah.
what I wanted to do now, Hollis, is, you and I connected via Podmatch, and
Yeah.
and I've said now that like I'm a newbie, like this is a whole new thing for me. But it's a very cool
Yeah, it sounds.
system where it's like a dating site for podcasters.
Exactly.
It's really great. I love it so far. But when we hooked up, one of the things that you said is that you had watched one of our videos about the cryptax, and that you were passionate about that, and that you're also very, very passionate about ODSP. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about one or the other or both of those.
Yeah, well, I mean,
very interesting.
ODSP is both a very needed tool to help people with disabilities because they pay for a lot of medical equipment in human life, and now what. Before I say this next sentence, what is your policy on cursing on this podcast?
We just say
You can go ahead.
Be yourself, and just say how you feel. And I don't read from scripts or anything. Same thing. We just kind of do it on the fly. So yeah, you just be yourself. Alice.
We have a swear jar. We have a swear jar though.
Great. All right. Well, yeah, just it's disabled as it's expensive as fuck to be disabled.
It is.
And
it is.
But at the same time, they do pay for some things, but they also manage to keep you in poverty because, if you start to earn a living, they drop you like a bad habit. Like like, oh, you don't need us? Okay, bye. And they don't sort of have any sort of program that gradually helps you find your calling. And I had a guest on my podcast just a couple weeks ago, and he was he had a brain injury as a child, and so he had wonderful ideas about how to reprogram or reformat the American medical system in that in that exact way. It's like, okay, you earn a bit more than we're allowing you to, so we're gonna back off slowly. And then another month, right? Okay, you're still doing good. Okay, we're gonna back off again a little bit more. And then instead of like dropping you like a bad habit, it will like help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of like building blocks, and work with the person, and see where things are at, what they can, what they can do, what they can't do, or if they can't do, how can how can the system work with you to see if you can do of the can't and turn it into a can. And sometimes you can't turn a an obstacle into a positive, but having that gradual a gradual system, that sounds interesting. Because yes, I mean, out in BC, the same thing is the BC the system for PWD is pretty well like almost like the same. It's like a copy and paste of what ODSP is in Ontario versus BC. They love to play the tag game back and forth, and having people living in legislated poverty, when they go
yeah,
to try to make money. Like say an employer says, "Well, okay, well, I've got a full-time job for you." Well, people on PWD, they look and they say, "Well, yeah, great, it's an opportunity." And but then the employer says, "But this is what I want you for." And then you say, "Well, I can only make so much money, because
yeah,
they'll cut me off." And then the employer says, "Oh, so you don't want to work?" Well, no,
yeah,
no, no, you do want to work. And then you deliberately, the person wants that job so bad, so they take it. Then they deliberately cut themselves down, and
yeah,
the employer
yeah,
sees that and they say, "Oh, well," they see a weakness, and then or they start kind of looking and analyzing the disability. And I think it's when I say analyzing the disability, maybe the employer doesn't know that the person has a disability. Maybe the employee doesn't want to feel discriminated, so they don't tell the employer that they have a disability because they don't want to be treated differently. And then the
yeah.
employer finds that they do, and then they say, "Well, why do you want to trim your hours back?" Well, because otherwise they'll kick me off. You're making too much money, or you're able to do the job fulfill the way the employer wants. But if you keep doing that, then the government says, "Oh, well, you're able to do the job with them. You don't need our service."
Yeah.
Then they get you off. Then it's hard to get back on if something happens to you on the job. Are you hearing that too, from different guests that you have on in Ontario?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then the other problem is like, many different jobs are also very strict on, how the format of the job is going to be. Like, for
Right.
instance, people with disabilities have a lot of trouble getting to the office.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then the employer might be like, well, you have to be here for the job, and then they're like, well, yeah, but I can do the same work on my computer from home,
Yeah.
Right.
and I can be, in today's world, we can be online for meetings, and
Mm-hmm.
we can still contribute in just the same amount of ways, and it's so much easier at home than it is at the office. And it may
Yeah.
be that they're doing a little bit more time at home in the winter,
Mm-hmm.
but then in the summer, then they can be in the office more than they can't in the summer or in the winter. Yeah.
Work from home, and some some people have the opportunity of being like an entrepreneur. They work for themselves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then sometimes they have a satellite office that they need to go to. Well, that's great if they can, mobility wise, if they can get to their satellite office, or when I say satellite office, I mean a physical office, right? And of
Exactly.
course, then having your employees set up, to basically help run that office or work from home, being more independent. And I mean, I find that it's more of a systemic issue that the government has created, like barriers in place of rather than working with the person of saying, well, what can you do? Like, what are your interests? Like, can we build from that point on? But they don't do that. They kind
Yeah.
of suppress it down of saying, well, this is well, this is a job. Well, yeah, I mean, go and do it. Well,
Well,
yeah,
I
but
just want I just want to pipe in too,
yeah,
like you and I are quite a bit older than Hollis. Like I'm going to be 58 years old soon, and so back in the day when I was first starting out in my career, one thing that I would see quite a bit was job postings that would say must be able to lift 20 pounds.
yeah. Now it's 50.
And I would always wonder if that was always added as a way of like filtering out anybody with a disability. Just add that line in, must be able to lift 20 pounds.
Yeah,
Like
I
that's
always
a,
saw
that's a
that.
very convenient way of just saying, well, we don't want anybody with a disability without saying we're discriminating. They can just say, well, must be able to lift 20 pounds. See, we're not discriminatory. We're just saying you have to be able to lift, lift a
Yeah,
box.
I remember seeing that on
Yeah,
applications.
like you would see
Yeah.
so many of those. Like
Yeah.
it was a
Few of
lot.
them.
It was a lot of posting. Not just one or two. It was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's another part I remember seeing on application. Do you consider yourself as a person with disabilities? Yes or no?
Yeah, that's
You know what I
true.
mean? And
Yeah.
some people would say, well, no, because
Yeah.
they want to be treated differently, so they would check off no,
Well,
and then
yeah,
hope that the employer doesn't,
Well, one thing I learned
Yeah.
one thing I learned was, again, when I was first starting out, is I started out, I would disclose. I used to disclose on my resume, and then I realized, you know what, that's dumb. I said, I'm going to disclose when I'm in front of that person, and they can see me and validate me as a person,
Exactly.
like face to face. So then I stopped disclosing on the resume, and I would fully disclose during the interview, because then I figured, well, the person sees me now, I can explain myself better than like one line description on a resume, right? So that's
Exactly.
that's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's I think part of I call it life's journeys, because being discriminated or judged, by putting something on a piece of paper, but then you're going to meet the employer or a business leader of any kind, and they're going to take you at face value. At least I would hope they would. And I always look at how Hellas is. When growing up, I would always be very self-conscious of myself and worry, well, what do other people think? And I was very quiet. I wouldn't really put my hand up and say anything because I'm thinking, well, what I have to say wasn't important. So I'd be very, very quiet in nature. Be like, oh, he's quiet as a little mousy. But as time went on, I learned that no, it's okay to get out of that shell. Is to say how you feel, of saying what you're going through, and worry that other people may judge what you have to say. But it's okay, though. It's okay to hear basic constructive criticism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hearing feedback of saying, well, have you thought of maybe this way? Because you shouldn't have said it this way. But, taking both sides and listening to both sides of an equation. And I learned that going through college too. Taking different courses, business administration, self-awareness programs.
What did you like about history, Hollis? What do you find interesting about history that you specialized in that?
Well, like I was originally, I grew up in a very political family. And for instance, my dad ran for federal office twice. And when I was a very young kid in Edmonton. And the funny thing is, like, growing up in Alberta, we were actually liberals in Alberta, which is hard to find. And so I developed a very big passion for history as a child, for politics as a child. And, I just remember going to these political events and meeting amazing people and meeting, we were friends with Paul Martin, and we would go to his cottage for Thanksgiving, and And so, but then, so
How come I wasn't invited? Hollis?
Yeah.
when I went into a university, I majored in political science because I'm like, oh, I love politics, so I must love this. And but then I really struggled for the first like 3 years. I almost got kicked out of university, and for a number of reasons. The major reason was that I was not receiving my readings in alternate format in enough time that I could keep up with the readings. And so I got put on academic probation, but then I decided to change from audio to video to PDF. And then my dad sort of said to me, Hollis, I get that you like politics, but you don't like the theory of politics. You enjoy the history of politics.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so I switched into history, and I just, yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
You know what, Brett? We're at the end of the half hour. But
Already,
this
time
was fun.
flies by.
This was fun, Hollis. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great to be here, Daz.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's awesome, and it's always awesome having wonderful guests like yourself joining us on the podcast. And I want to extend the opportunity for you to come on for future shows and continue on and see where we left off on our next conversation. And so, thank you, Hollis.
Yeah, anytime.
So, thank you, everyone. Hollis Peirce from Ottawa, Ontario, joining me on a PWD Allies podcast today. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning in today. Please subscribe, like, and share the content. And if you'd like to help out our channel, we'd be greatly appreciated. Help in any way that you can. Thank you, everyone, and stay tuned for possible merch. You love the mug. You love the mug, everybody. This is the PWD Allies mug. I always show it off on the shows. One side has that, and the other side has the logo, the wheelchair with the Canadian flag around it. Yeah, and the PWD Allies mug.